Okay, Sonya, thank you so much for being here. I am excited. This is our second time sitting together, but first time we sat down together, for the very first time I met you, we had like a 3-4 hour conversation. We could have gone longer. So I'm just really excited. Just a little bit about you. Sonya Martinez Ortiz is a Chicana therapist, consultant, and founder of Rooted Soul, a private practice dedicated to healing and justice. You support individuals and organizations committed to growth that centers care, integrity, and long-term impact. Your work lives at the intersection of individual healing and systemic change. That's why you and I got along so well, because that is exactly where I'm headed towards, at least with even just this podcast, is just sort of the wellness and then also social justice work. You believe healing happens in the collective and is a necessary part of restoring wholeness in people and systems. With over 2 decades of experience across trauma recovery, community development, and social change, you bring an integrated approach grounded in clinical depth, cultural wisdom, and systems thinking. Most recently, you served as an executive director of the Rape Recovery Center in Salt Lake City, where you led the organization through structural transformation. After years in nonprofit leadership and academia, you returned to grow your business, Rooted Soul, with this renewed clarity, creating accessible restorative spaces where sustainability is central. Your practice is trauma-informed, grounded in ancestral wisdom, and liberatory values. You're also a somatic therapist, and you integrate body-based approaches that honor the wisdom of the nervous system and support long-term healing. And you're currently completing your yoga teacher training to deepen and expand your work in the wellness space.
Yes.
So I'm excited to talk to you because I really want to touch on women of color in sort of their overachievement and how that quickly leads to burnout. And you have a personal experience in this.
I do.
So you have your clinical background, but then you personally have experienced burnout more recently.
Yes.
And so could you tell us about that story? What led you to the point where you needed to quit your job because you were already at the brink of like, this isn't working for me?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, and thank you for that introduction, I have worked in social justice, community-facing activist helping roles for the last 2 decades. And for the last 5 years, I led the Rape Recovery Center, which is a community-based nonprofit rape crisis center. And so that's loaded, right? There's all kinds of stuff there. And so I already came into a position, obviously really well prepared to take over that role. And also my first week was the week of lockdowns during COVID. And so I entered the job in probably one of the most heightened crisis periods. And then we started experiencing this kind of awakening of racial justice, right? Yeah. Literally in the streets. And we were already working from a framework of liberation and consent and like inclusive practices at a rape crisis center, right? And then with all of these community issues were compiling on top of an organization who had seen like really major expansive growth due to the Me Too movement. So I'm coming in at the heels of Me Too, really just kind of flooding the community, and now we're in this sort of new crisis era. And so it was grind, because that's what I do. I always held 3 jobs, including when I first took on the executive director role, I was still teaching in social work at the University of Utah, and I had my private practice, which was really small. I had like 5 clients, and I would do some short-term consulting work with nonprofits or community-based agencies. And I was like, wait.
And then an executive director for a major nonprofit here in Salt Lake.
It's a pretty known, well-respected, with high expectations nonprofit in the Salt Lake City area. And I was like, oh, wait, like something about this is not going to work. And so I stepped back from teaching. I folded my private practice.
When did you know that at that point? Because
I didn't really know it till like 2022, 2023. So I was still doing
so like 3
that.
years after. Okay.
Yeah, but I was on, like I was working, I was grinding, and that's what I've always done my whole life. I mean, grew up in a low-income single mother household. My father was incarcerated. Like that's all I ever knew. And it just kept compounding. And it was actually in 2024 where I had this moment where I was like, I'm not okay. And I went to my board chair and I said, I need to remind everybody I'm an employee of this organization too, and I may need to take some extended time off. So fast forward, took me months
to take that extended time. You talked to your board chair. You said this, and then it took you a couple months
like
after
6.
to even. Okay, so like almost a year.
Yeah. So I took 30 days of uninterrupted time during October of 2024, which was not that long ago, almost a year ago. And I was like, oh, I'm actually like away. My staff stepped in. They took on the role so that it could be uninterrupted. Like the rule was, do not text me, do not call me, except for 3 situations. Like the building burns down, there's some kind of death. Like this is where my thinking was. Like if someone dies, please don't wait till I get back from my time off.
Yeah.
You know, and like it was that, and then if there's some crazy media thing where like we're going to be plastered all over the news because something happened.
Yeah.
And so I was like, those are the 3 conditions. And the operations director, we joked and said he has access to the bat phone, which means like if he's calling, it's legit. And I took the time off and realized, wow, like I really needed that time off. I didn't realize, I knew I was struggling, but I didn't realize like the thick of it until I was off. And then I had so much time, like I got in my body. I got out hiking. I went and spent time with my family in New Mexico. I spent some time doing nothing. Like I was able to cook, cultural food.
What was that transition? Because when you decided to use your leave, or your time off, what made you do that? Was there something that happened that you needed to, then you're like, oh wait, I remembered that I requested this, or I had talked about this 6 months ago.
I was feeling symptoms of irritability. Like I was feeling irritability.
Yeah.
I was feeling a loss of patience. I was starting to, I had already been finding myself in a place of like, I don't want to socialize with people because I people too much at work.
Yeah.
And then what really started happening is if you were to talk to my former staff, they would say like she's someone who is really open to feedback and listens really well and is just like a source of a place that feels like helpful. And so I had this very like, it
open.
Doesn't stick on me. Yeah. Open, like, and I felt myself being annoyed by everything, frustrated by everything, like wanting to tell people, wanted to react. I'm a very direct person, but I can be very measured, particularly with folks who work with me, because I know that like words have an impact. But I was at the point where I was like about to give no shits about how anybody felt about the feedback I gave them. And I was like, oh, this is not good, especially when you're working in a role where the whole point of it is like healing injustice, right? Yeah. And I'm like, that's probably not a good place to be. And then I said, oh yeah, I told my board chair I was going to take time off. And then as, the universe will have it, we had our monthly one-on-one, and she's like, so about that time off.
Oh, she brought it up.
She's like, so about that time off, like you haven't taken it. And I was like, I know. And I'm going to take it, and I have a plan. Yeah. And so I told her the plan, and she's like, okay, like you need to do it. You actually need to do it. And so she was really supportive in that way. Yeah. And so I took the time off. I talked to my staff, and they were like, good, you need to, like, we'll hold down the fort. Like a month is fine. Like, nothing's going to fall apart. And I'm like, I know. Like, we've worked together so hard over the last 5
Yeah.
years to create a situation where no one person should hold all
Yeah.
the burden. No one person should have to solve all of the problems. And so like I knew that I was trying to put that in place, but I was just, there was some cognitive dissonance for me. And then I was like, okay, I need to take the time off. And then when I took the time off, I was like, oh, I do enjoy people.
You're like, wait a minute.
I like
My
people.
personality's coming back. My real personality's coming back.
Yeah, and I had time, and I went hiking by myself, and like I went and spent time with my mom without like having to sneak away and jump on a Zoom call. And my mom retired recently in the last few years, and so I'm like, I haven't even spent that much time with her since she retired. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is good. I came back. You know, nothing caught on fire. Nobody passed away. Like
Yeah,
none
yeah.
of my worst
None of your
fears.
top three
Yeah, my
things,
top
yeah.
three happened, and they
Yeah.
all said, "We have it, and we're so glad you're back." Like, how do you do this? You know? And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and so, but I felt good, and I felt like it had worked, and it wasn't taking the time off. When I reflected, it was what I did during my time off that I wasn't making time for. In some cases wasn't able to make time for it. In other cases was not choosing to make time for it because I felt so tired at the end of the day, or I felt so frustrated or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, like I can do this. I'm in an okay place, but also knowing I'm also a leader that believes there's an expiration date for leadership because you get set in your ways. You know that we've tried that 5 times already. Like maybe the 6th time it will work, but you're less able as a leader. And no matter how self-reflective you are, like we all get there, right? And so I knew that my time was limited, and I was hitting the 5-year mark, and I had told friends 7 to 10 years I think is the max an executive should be in their role at a nonprofit anyway.
Yeah.
And I had just hit the 5-year mark, and I was like, 7 years isn't that far, but it's also kind of long. And we were looking at launching a capital campaign, which require your brother is in fundraising.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I had to start asking myself, do I have the energy to give everything I've given the last 5 years to get us through this capital campaign? And the answer was I wasn't sure. So then I started to do an assessment of where the organization was at. And I was like, whoa, wait, this organization is in a better place than when I came. No shade on the previous people. It's just the nature of the work, right?
Yeah.
Like you grow on the foundation, you make updates and changes, and, you know, you do what you can. I mean, I guess that's the hope, is that we all leave the place a little better than we found it, no matter what it is, a campsite or an organization, right? And I started to do an assessment of where the org was at, and I was like, maybe I don't need to wait till 7 years, and maybe it's not good because we might be mid capital campaign at 7 years. And I know it sounds silly to have this like number placed on it, but I was just really set on the fact that I wouldn't be a good leader if I stayed too long.
Yeah.
And so I started looking, I'm like, wait, all of these things I put in place, like we have a really strong leadership team. And then the new administration switched over, and our field started being attacked.
Yeah.
And I was like, it felt like COVID 2.0, very different context, very different reasons. And I was like, I don't know how many leaders have 2 pandemics in them, because it was feeling like a financial, like a resource pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you know, maybe I don't know if I can now speak very publicly. I mean, I spoke publicly about it then too, but I can speak really publicly just how crazy it was. Not just daily, on the hour we were getting updates. And again, I stepped back and did a self-assessment. It's like, I'm already irritable. Do I have...
You're already at max.
Yeah,
at
I'm
this point.
already at max, and I've been at max. Is that fair to the organization? Right? Who needs someone who can throw all of their energy into at least the next 4 years, and then the consequences of what happens over these 4 years. for nonprofits and for organizations like rape crisis centers that are being actually targeted, right, for funding and resource loss. And there's not enough private funding and support to fill the gaps of all of the government support. And so fast forward, I get on a call with my board chair and I say, I had told her before, eventually my time's going to be up and we should start talking about some formal succession planning. And it was kind of like, she's like, oh, like, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, no, don't worry. But then after this reflection, we had a meeting and I said, we need to talk really seriously about succession planning, especially given what, where the board wants to go next. I'm not sure I'm the right person to continue leading the organization through that. And I think the organization is in a really good place. And I believe in transitioning leadership during good times, not bad times.
Yeah.
And it just feels like that's just a really strong value of mine. And so we had a conversation. She asked me to think about if an extended sabbatical would be a better alternative. And I came back a month later, the night before.
So you did think about it.
I
you
did.
took some time. Okay.
I did think about it.
You were really like weighing out all your options.
All the options. And it was like the day before our meeting, and I looked at the calendar and I was like, I need to give at least 8 weeks notice. No more, no less.
Mm-hmm.
And 8 weeks would be the end of this week. And we have a fundraiser coming up at the end of the week. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know why I felt it was do or die, because it really wasn't. It's not like there was some pivotal date at the end of May. I just was like, got to do it. And my husband, if you were to talk to my husband, he would tell you when she makes a decision, that there's nothing that can get in the way.
Yeah.
And so that's the story. And then I told her, and she was really supportive, and she said something really powerful to me, which was, because she knew a little bit about my history, right? I was really open with the board, very financially conservative at the organization, which served us well.
Yeah.
We were able to seed a fund. We were able to get out of debt. But it also, when you're in that scarcity, it also limits your thinking of abundance. And so I was really open with the board, because that was something I was constantly trying to work through.
Yeah.
And she's like, look, you have a little bit of privilege now, right? I don't know your full financial situation, but I know that you're in a 2-income household. And my guess is you're probably in a better position than you were when you were a single mom, or when your mom was a single mom. And you should really consider taking some real time off during this transition. And the thing that was stuck out the most was, she said, you don't have to wait till you fall and can't get up. And I was like, oh, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm. You and a lot of women of color specifically, but yeah.
And so that's how we got here. And my last day was May 30th. My staff was really supportive. They had really emotional goodbyes. And then I have been going through my yoga teacher training. I've been taking time off. I've been spending time with family. And it's really interesting, because when I'm seeing people that I haven't saw for a while, even just last night, my husband and I met up with a friend of ours, and he was like, whoa, you look different. And I'm like, I do? And he's like, yeah, I don't know what it is, but time off is really doing something for you. And I'm like, oh, do I not have a resting bitch face anymore?
It's hilarious.
So that's how we got here.
So when you have 2 questions for you. One is, do you think you should have left sooner? Because I see that you were taking time to figure out what your options were, but did you know in your mind when you needed to go?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I think I needed to take time for myself sooner.
Before. So it wasn't about the organization or the work. It was just like, oh, I feel like I need to fill my cup up a bit. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And then it eventually got to the place where, one, the nature of the work, the nature of the current socio-political climate, and just timing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been sustainable for me to stay longer.
Yeah.
But could it have been more sustainable had I taken better care of myself, had I had, navigated. And when I say take better care of myself, like really following the advice that I give other people. Like I would make staff take time off. I'm like, you haven't, like, the reason we have a limit on rollover on PTO is to incentivize you to actually take it. It's not because we want to save money, right? Like, it's actually to incentivize you. But I was saying a lot of things that I wasn't practicing myself. Or I would tell people, we want you to have flexible work schedule. So if you're going to choose to work at 10 p.m. at night, like, as long as you're getting your work done and your hours in and you're in the office or in the meetings when you need to be, I don't care. But don't be chatting and emailing other people, because it sends a message that there's especially if you're in a supervisory role, it sends this message and expectation that you should be on. And not that I did that. I tried really hard, but sometimes I would reply.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they'd email me or chat me or text me even, and I would reply. And my husband would be like, you're being a hypocrite. Like, and I'm like, well, they seem really anxious, and I'm like, it wasn't until after that I was like, okay, I'm saying one thing and I'm not actually fully practicing it under the guise of being supportive.
Yeah. When you're, this is so interesting, because I feel like with women, and specifically women of color, there's something that it's hard for us to just turn it off, because we're worried about how we're going to be perceived, or we're worried about this, the resting thing is just not, it's never been modeled to us. You were talking about your upbringing, and you're raised by a single mom. I don't know if you saw her rest. I don't know if that was even a thing. No. I didn't see my mom or anybody in my aunts or anybody rest.
Yeah, I mean, my grandma was a housekeeper for wealthy people, but then at night she cleaned banks.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So nights and weekends.
Constantly working. And so
if you weren't working at a job, you were working at home.
Yeah, that's
laundry,
right. Laundry,
cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, like all those things.
That's right. And so what does it mean when we take a step back and we don't answer the email, or we just rest, whatever rest looks like? What does that mean? What does that mean about us?
Yeah.
And so I was curious, is that some of the things, like when you were thinking about, I better respond, before you got to the point where even your partner, your husband, pointed out that you're not modeling the behavior, the way you preach, before you got there, what was it that was urging you to be on top of it?
This never letting up sense of like supporting other people, caring for other people.
Yeah.
It's always been about, like, yes, when I was a little bit younger, so I'm in my mid-40s now. When I was a little bit younger, there was an aspect of like, what will people think about me? I need to prove, right, that I'm smart, I'm strong, I'm committed, I'm whatever, right? I'm resilient. I can get through this. I know what I'm doing. I can outbeat everybody. I can outwork everybody. As I started to get older, and I also had like an unwavering thing in me to care for other people. As I got older, it was less about what other people thought about me, but I definitely had still this very loud narrative around my work ethic.
Yeah.
And like, even if I don't care, what other people think about me, I care a whole lot about if I am practicing within my values, if I am living up to a strong work ethic. And I'm sure it has to do with some of those things. I'm sure it still like subconsciously has to do with other people, right?
Yeah.
But it's not how it manifested for me. It manifested as I'm proving myself, right? I'm proving to myself that I can do this. I can push through anything. That's how you get to a place like this from a place I came from, right? Like, that's the narrative. And then on top of that was like, as an executive, I care deeply about the people who work for me. I want them to experience a workplace that models the vision we have for society, which is nonviolent, which is accessible and equitable and inclusive, and a place where you can take care of yourself and be your authentic self And I just care so deeply about those values that I wasn't slowing down long enough to realize that in the process of doing that, I wasn't seeing myself as like a beneficiary or someone who deserved to have that same experience.
Yeah. So when you took the moment to come back, you said, you know, you took some time off before you quit. You took some time off. When you came back into your body, or you said, because you had mentioned that you took some time to come back into your body, what did that feel like, and what was the difference?
Well, one of the first, so as you mentioned, I'm a somatic therapist, and I've been a somatic therapist for a while. And so I believe very deeply in like being able to notice, like if I get those flutters in my stomach, or if my back hurts, or if my shoulders are tense, or I'm getting a headache, like what is that manifestation, right? What is actually happening? Because it's rarely just like a physical thing. There's usually something behind that, especially for women of color. Yeah. And I say especially, and we can talk about that, and just like the disproportionate impact of mental health and risk factors for mental health.
Do you happen to know
conditions.
Where physically women of color typically feel most of their, I mean, I'm sure
I don't
it's
know,
different.
I don't know that
Okay.
right now. I could make some guesses just based on lived experience and the client work, but it's often in the gut. And then if we look at things like chakras and other like Eastern philosophies, you'll find that kind of where the bundles of these nervous systems live kind of align with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I would say things like the gut, things like the back.
Yeah, I'm always like this.
Yes, the shoulders and the neck. I would say there's a lot of like this kind of mid body area that's impacted.
So like the world is kind of pushing down, and then there's
literally
no like
weight on
alignment.
literally holding the weight of
That's
the world
right,
on the shoulders. If you imagine that, like it's a visceral image for me now, because I'm like, I actually know what that feels like. And so when I took the time off, the first realization, or that embodied experience that I had during that time off, is I was on a hike by myself, and I just remember stopping and like looking up at the sky and being like, I have never felt so free. And it was like, wait, why do I feel free? What do I feel in my body? And it was like, I feel really neutral in my body right now.
I don't even know what does that
Exactly.
feel like? I mean, when you said that, I was like,
what's neutral feel like?
What is that?
Yeah.
Because
And so,
I'm always feeling like,
yes. And that's some of the work of like embodiment, is like, can you find neutral? And then when you can find neutral, can you find the opposite of chronic stress and pain? But for most of us, it's actually us learning what neutral looks like. And I was like, the euphoria wasn't about this, like, I feel so amazing.
Right.
I was like, I feel neutral in my body, which is like crazy, right? But that was kind of the first.
What is that? Like no pain,
just
kind
like light on my feet, my back, my shoulders, and my neck wasn't hurting, because I have quite a bit of chronic pain in my neck, my back, and my shoulders. And I was just like, I am doing a pretty strenuous hike that I haven't done in a while, and I'm breathing heavy, and like, but I'm breathing well. I feel strong, and my body just feels neutral.
Wow.
Like I don't feel like I'm fighting anything, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't feel like this euphoria, because I was also doing like a hard hike, right? So it wasn't like I was like, in like spa realm.
Yeah. That's interesting too. Do you feel like that there were things that you were doing beforehand that got you to that sort of neutral spot? Or did you just in that moment, you were able to release something in your mind that got you into that neutral spot?
I think I was over the course of a couple of days of being time off. I think the process of actually just saying out loud that I was disconnecting did something.
Okay.
It was like, okay. And then people saying, it's okay, we got it. And yes, we will reach out if any of these 3 crazy things happen, right? And I was like, okay, I actually trust these people. And by the way, that's a whole other topic we could go into. I don't trust.
I was going to ask you a little bit about
like
that
I don't
too,
trust very well, but
Yeah.
these folks I've been working with for a while, and they've committed to the same values I'm committed to. And, we've had lots of opportunities for tears and repairs in our relationship. And I was like, oh no, I actually trust that these people know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. And they'll reach out to me in these worst case scenarios. Right. And so I was able to just like, there was a visceral switch that flipped, because I was able to just to say out loud and then
Just,
have
like,
it
release it.
reciprocated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you think that's hard for women of color? This is a silly question because I could answer it, but I mean, because you're a therapist and you've worked with a lot of clients, and you have. I mean, we know some of the same women of color friends, and like
we probably had some of these same conversations with some of the same people in different spaces.
Exactly. And so I wonder, what is it that holds us back from surrendering like that? And I know trust is a big, major factor.
Lived experience.
Yeah.
The world and systems are not set up for us to thrive. Yeah. They extort everything from us, our physical, emotional energy, and even our resources. We've got some of the highest spending power in the country. Latinas have, I think, now the highest spending power in the country. We are literally being extracted at every opportunity. So life experience has showed us that if we let up, right, who's going to catch us?
Yeah. You can't trust anyone.
No. That's what, even though we should and we can.
Yeah.
There's so much lived experience that says the opposite of that. It's like this constant, the world and society and systems, mostly systems, formal systems, reinforce that we've got to have the superwoman complex. Because it's even down to pain management. Yeah. Right? Like, they experience less pain, particularly Black women, right? There's lots of research around that. Yeah. Doctors underprescribe women of color, particularly Black women. There are experiences of like, so when you look at the nonprofit sector, they have some research when women of color step into leadership positions. So first, for a field that is primarily white women dominated, there's still an overproportionate representation of men in leadership roles, and then white women obviously coming in second. And well, I think white women are still the highest, which makes sense because there's less men in nonprofit, but men still have a higher like presence than women of color in leadership. And that has been changing over the last probably 5-6 years. But there's some research that shows when women of color are brought into leadership positions are generally brought in when an organization is fumbling. So like they take a risk on us when the organization is already flailing.
And it's not to clean up, it's just so that the blame kind of
It's both.
Okay.
I think it's both.
I can't trust anything. So
I think it's both. I think it's both the like there's someone to blame it on, right? But we also do clean shit up. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think it's a combination of both. And so we see that's the case. And then when organizations do fail, they usually were already failing, had already fell, but they were trying to put a Band-Aid, and then they give an opportunity to a woman of color. Still, even in those situations, most women of color turn things around, but they're still an easy target. And so when you see like that, there's a model, and I'm not going to be able to quote it right now, but it's like a little chart and graph. It's like the problem woman of color in an organization.
I think I've seen this.
And it's like we bring you in for your diversity of ideas, and you're like, and then all of a sudden you become the problem. So you just keep thinking about these experiences that are actually studied. This isn't like us. Yeah, our lived experience is important, and I will go 10 toes down on that all day long. And there's actual research
says.
The research says. And I think when you layer those, why would we trust that we can let go? Why would we trust that we can step back? And then, I'm painting a really I'm this broad stroke of women of color. I know not all women of color fit into this, but most of us are very mission aligned in our work. And that's taken advantage of.
Like when you said care, and you said care, like I that is what was driving you. I think at the core of, yes, there's reputation and there's having to prove yourself and there's all these other factors systemically that you're trying to fit into, but there is an underlying piece of care where even in relationships, one-on-one relationships can be taken advantage of to organizations. And I've seen that across the board.
And entire family systems even.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I think that's the underlying thing, is that there's this trust that women of color can handle it, and they can, but because of how hard they've had to work to get there. But then also there's just sort of this, it could all, I lost my train of thought just now. It could all kind of fall away if I really did. I just lost my train of thought.
So we were talking.
What was I talking about?
we were talking about the, like, why it's so hard for women of color to like step back and let go, and then we kind of got on this train of trust and like the systems being against us, you know, like they're built for us to not be able to navigate in a healthy way.
That's right. That's right. And then the care part of it is if we say, okay, we know that they care.
Right.
They're going to handle everything. We can pay them low. We can put them at a lower, level in any kind of organization. Give them extra work, and they're going to stay because they care.
Yes.
And so that all leads to this. That's the equation.
That's
to
the equation.
Quick burnout.
That's
which
the equation.
is,
or sometimes a very slow burn that becomes even more disastrous.
Yeah, because there's women that stay even after the burnout. What does that look like?
So, well, we can talk a little bit about burnout. Like, burnout is official. So the World Health Organization is who manages the ICD, which is the actual acronym, but it's basically the classification. International. I know. What is it with today?
It's perimenopause or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's perimenopause. It is. The International Classification of Diseases. We're now on version 11.
Okay.
It actually has burnout as a condition. It's considered a workplace phenomenon.
Oh, is this new?
No. Well, ish.
I mean, I wouldn't know what.
In the 2020s, I believe, is when they identified it. So it's fairly new. I said no, but like that's because I've been like, I'm razor focused on this issue. But I think in the ICD-10 is when they first introduced it as an actual condition. It's not considered a disease that's diagnosable, but it is diagnosable as a workplace phenomenon. So it has very specific symptoms tied to it. But they look a lot like anxiety and depression.
Really?
So it doesn't mean you have anxiety and depression, but it manifests in a very similar way, and it can lead to anxiety and depression, just like all chronic stress. So we've got burnout, which is a workplace condition, and then we have chronic stress or trauma, or, add all the other things that folks experience in their lives, and that can be a really big factor on people's both their physical and their emotional well-being. And so what we notice is with burnout, you see like I said, it can resemble anxiety and depression, not quite anxiety and depression, but it's similar, like cynicism, like lack of interest in the things that you were interested in before.
Memory loss.
Clearly, memory loss, difficulty sleeping. I mean, you could list symptoms of, not all of them, but you could list many of the symptoms of depression and anxiety, and they would actually, so this is where it gets confusing too, is because sometimes we think something's just wrong with us. And by the way, I want to say nothing is wrong with us, even when we're diagnosed with anxiety and depression. But we can internalize those things as there's something wrong with me. Yeah. Workplace burnout. Burnout is a workplace phenomenon that is brought on by unjust systems and chronic stress in the workplace.
Do you think it's worse? I mean, or do we just have more research around it? Or
I think a couple things. I think both. I'm always like both. That this is like
research says
that is like classic me. Like yes, and
I love it.
I think it's both. I think one, we have more women in the workforce, more women in leadership roles, which is what we've been fighting for.
Yeah.
But the systems were not built and designed for women, for mothers, for caretakers, right? And we also have access to more information. But I think the combination of more women in leadership roles, more women in the workplace, we're being more exploited because there's more of us to exploit. Now, not to say that folks in the home weren't experiencing, but it's different. It's a workplace condition, workplace phenomenon. But I think we're also willing to talk about it. Like there's podcasts like this. There's people writing books. There's people blogging. On LinkedIn, you can find a corner where people are talking about burnout, right?
Yeah.
And I think with women in particular, we're also, not always a little bit better at talking about how we're being impacted.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are more emotive and we actually speak like to our girlfriends, to our peers, to our colleagues. We're a little bit more open about sharing those things. And so I think it's also led to a little bit more research being done as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder too, for women of color, do we have, I feel like we may have more of a threshold, which is not the greatest language to use around it in terms of the fact that there's sexism, there's racism, there's all these other factors. But again, kind of what we mentioned earlier is this underlying,
like forced resiliency, essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
I think there definitely is some forced resiliency there. I don't know if we necessarily have a higher tolerance or we're just forced to be resilient and tolerate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we're just forced. We're not really finding it within ourselves. We're already on empty. We're running on low. There's no.
And the outcome and the reason I say that, because the outcome and consequences is that women of color are disproportionately more at risk for developing chronic conditions, right? We're talking heart disease, autoimmune disorders. And again, this is research. You can go to the National Institute of Health's website. I looked today. They haven't pulled that stuff down from there yet. I know the CDC has pulled down some reports, but the data and the research exists. So you can look at National Institute of Health. CDC used to have some stuff, but women of color are disproportionately more at risk to things like heart disease, diabetes, and autoimmune disorders.
Oh, wow.
And then we also disproportionately impacted by anxiety and depression. And so that's why I say I'm not sure that we actually have a higher tolerance.
We're being forced into these diseases.
And we're bearing the consequences of the physical and emotional health outcomes.
So then, because your organization, it sounds like you set up a great infrastructure for yourself and your staff and your leaders. But it seems like your organization met you. How encouraging your board chair was to say, okay, like,
and the
you
staff
don't need to fall. Yeah, and the staff. So you were in a situation where the work itself is really heavy work, but you had great people. You fostered relationships. You built the infrastructure so that there's a plan for everything. For the women and women of color that are in organizations where that's just not the case, and if they're at a point maybe at burnout or the cusp of burnout or beyond burnout, what would you advise them at the moment?
So I always come from a place of like, what's the socio-political context that the person lives in?
Yeah.
Right? What is the environmental field that they live in? And so for some folks, the advice is going to be different because financially they might not have a lot of options in their current, like immediately, right? They can work towards changing a situation. And then for folks who have the ability, pivoting, like when you're noticing, like, I think what I'm trying to say is that don't do what you usually do, which is push through it, because eventually your body will force you to slow down.
Yeah.
And it's not usually in a way that we want, because also many of us are so driven and so active. I've had friends, I've had colleagues who, like, they're like they're terrified because they felt like they were almost becoming disabled by either the physical or the emotional health that they were experiencing from it. And so that's the first thing I want to say is, like, don't do what we normally do, which is try to grind it out, because eventually your body will catch up with you. I've seen situations where people, like, they literally just couldn't function at work anymore, and they still ended up losing their job because of it.
That's the other thing. And while you were saying that, I was thinking about that, because just recently I met up with a friend who was talking about her sister who worked for a nonprofit, and then it was grueling work where she actually got injured on the job. So she didn't even get pushed to any kind of just something that just happened and unfolded. She got hurt on the job and she got let go. And I'm sure there's a lot of things behind the scenes, but she is now left with this long-term injury, and the organization didn't really care.
Well, and what I want people to hear is that organizations and businesses do not care about you like that.
Yeah.
And this is coming from a person that was an executive director. I cared, but the organization, the entity itself, does not care about people.
Yeah.
It's not a person, it's a system full of people, and the work will move on without you.
That's right. You're completely replaceable.
Yeah, and I know that people have cringed when I've said that, and I don't mean that in a way that, like, people aren't beautiful and unique and have all this to give, but it literally, we've probably both seen literally organizations and companies move on, no matter if you were the star, whatever. And so you have to remember that you can care and you can be committed to a mission and to a cause, but you should never, like, show the same loyalty to a job, because it's still a job. It's a means of living, even if it's a mission-oriented job. So don't do what you normally do, what you would do, like that ride or die behavior you do for a partner, for a child. Like, you don't do that to jobs, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, what is in your control, right? It feels like more work to go get physical activity. It feels like more work to create routine for ending your day at the end of a day, because we don't do well with, we might be off of work, but if we're not coming up with some kind of ritual or process for, like, I'm done with work right now, it's going to just seep in all the time.
Oh, yes.
Right? And that's the chronic stress of it. And, there's a different conversation to be had with women of color who are self-employed, because we have more flexibility, but we also can find ourselves treating ourselves the same way as self-employed folks. But when you're at an organization, first identify, like, what privilege, what access do you have, if, like, and what scale are you at? Think about a thermometer, right? Where are you at on the temperature? Are you at fever? Are you nearing a fever? Are you just, like, slightly warm? And then if so, your tactics are going to be different, which is why I think it's helpful also to have a professional help you work through it the minute that you start noticing it, because we will talk ourselves out of, I talked myself out of taking time off I had already asked and was granted for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was the person in charge. So we have to be aware of, like, our abilities. So I'm not suggesting everybody can take off a month like I did. I'm not suggesting everybody can quit their job like I did. But we all have the ability to make some choices and consent to do things and not do things. Yeah. And then the one thing that maybe people won't want to hear is that you have a responsibility to figure out how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And to ask for help.
You owe it to yourself to do that. I think that's That is so important because we get so caught up in the work of it all, the organization, with the organization moving up the ladder or getting noticed or whatever it may be, that we completely leave ourselves. I've been there. I've worked in the corporate space, and I just remember, and in the nonprofit space, both, and in higher education, in all the sectors. I remember how it felt to, well, I got to prove myself and I got to find it within me to keep going. And I just forgot. I forgot even who I actually, where was my, I don't even know what my values were. You're like, these are my work ethics. And if I'm not in alignment with that, that's a problem for me. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't, in the midst of trying to prove myself, I wouldn't even articulate that to you, that I even have any kind of value, because I've just so far gone into the organization. Now the organization is my child, and as if I'm the CEO or president or founder of this organization. And that's just, I've seen so many people have so much loyalty. Women of color have so much loyalty to the organization that they work with or work for, and there's just not that.
So there's when we get to the responsibility part, right? The first part in taking responsibility is actually doing a values assessment, actually doing a values assessment. And, different people do an exercise a different way, but it's as simple as you could probably even Google it and find a sheet of a list just of values, words. Yeah. You can make one up. You can just take a lined piece of paper and write a bunch of words that you associate with values, even if they're not things that you value. Someone might say, well, I don't value money. Okay, that's okay, but write it down on the paper, cut them up, and then pick your top 10 or top 15. So you give yourself a lot, right? What's all the values? Family, equity, justice, whatever. And then you go to 10. Then you go to 5. Then you go to 3. And then you put the 3 in order.
Oh. Okay, so hit the overachieving. And then put it in order. Okay.
And the reason that you do that is because then you can assess, am I actually living in accordance with my values?
Yeah.
And you might say, let's say, for example, equity or caring for the people in your life, whatever that value would be. And it's in your top. And then you say, well, yeah, this is why I work so much. But are you really able?
But can you spend time with your mom who retired and the people that you do care about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or are you, for me, I care very deeply about my colleagues and the folks that work with me. But if I'm actually not modeling it, am I really showing up to that value?
Yeah.
Because you're the model, you're the mentor for people, right? And so it's what kind of ancestor do you want to be? What kind of mentor do you want to be? So I almost say, let's capitalize on the fact that a lot of us already live from that place. I want to be a good ancestor. I want to be a good mother. Okay, so now let's actually deconstruct what it means to do that.
Yeah, not and just because you and I were talking about this too, and we both said family, but then family, I'm learning also what is it? My whole family, which I grew up in, or is it my core family? Yeah. And that just getting that narrow is really important for you, because otherwise you don't know where you're at. You're giving, again, you're going away from yourself.
Yeah, because it may cause conflict, for example, in your relationship with your partner.
Yeah.
Right? If you've decided that your core immediate family that you've created is higher on the priority list, then it's going to determine how you interact with your family in a way that does not sever the relationship that you have with your partner. And it's fine if people don't choose that in that way.
Yeah.
We just have consequences to what we choose, right? But we need to be aware. I'm a person that believes in consent, including for ourselves. How do you live in a way where you're operating from consent? Well, you have to actually be clear first. And then you get to make those decisions. And I'll never judge you. on what those,
Yeah.
as long as you're actually making them consciously, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're okay with the consequences of that, good or bad.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say good or bad. Like, let's not even put a positive or a negative charge on that. They just are, the consequences are what they are.
Choice
It's
that
your
you
choice.
made. Yeah. This is also interesting because once and I love this values work, even just this very practical exercise. But once you narrow down your values 5, 3, whatever it is, then you can kind of decide how mediocre you want to be in a job or whatever, family dynamic or whatever, because then that overachieving and having most women of color in their mediocrity is
not mediocre.
It's not.
my friends and I I remember one of my very good friends, actually, Kate, one time we were talking and I've told her this and she's told me this, is like, yeah, but you're 120%. Like your 70% is still 110%. Or we said something. So I have this new like kind of mantra for myself is like, what does it mean to be at a level 7 and not a 10 all the time? Like, what does it mean to not be balls to the wall with everything all the time? Sorry for the gender reference, but I feel like it gives you just like this visual like,
my all. Yeah.
Giving my all.
Yeah.
What might it look like to be a
scale back.
7?
Yeah.
And then what might it look like to actually be like a 5? Are you someone that could never be a 5? Okay, maybe it's a 6.
Yeah.
But like you said, like then you can make this assessment of, because I'm telling you all and myself, I have to remind myself, there is not enough time in the day to do it all and be it all and to do it all perfectly.
No. Nope. So I appreciate you said that because, again, that is something but when we figure out our values, it would be easier for us to differentiate. If we want to give it our balls to the wall effort, it's going to be within these 3 realms.
Exactly. And that's okay. If that's who we are.
Yeah.
But let's choose to use it wisely on the things that matter the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we kind of throw that at stuff that doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. It's true. I love this so much because now with that choice, you're not saying quit your job, but you are saying maybe scale back a little or maybe make it not mean what you think it means to you.
Yeah.
And change your focus a bit. Still do your best, whatever that looks like, but it doesn't need to be the best.
Exactly. Something really practical you can do. And we actually implemented this at the Rape Recovery Center. But if your job, your supervisor, your organization, your business doesn't do this, you can still do it on your own, which is creating a role assessment. It's more actually a role inventory. So you take your job description, you look at your calendar, you take all your tasks and projects, and you actually put it
like a side by side.
You look at it side by side, but then so this is where my overachiever comes in, but you overachiever friends.
In an Excel sheet.
Yes, it's an Excel sheet.
With several tabs.
Yes. So you overachievers will appreciate that there's an actual practical activity that you can do. And so you take an Excel spreadsheet and you break it up into sections. Here's weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, annually, and then any other kind of critical timeline moments that that your work kind of falls in. And then I know you're looking at me, you're gonna look at me but
I'm loving this.
You don't have to get this detailed, but for those of you who are like me,
send it to me so that I could just plug and play.
Yes. So then you break it down, meeting, task, project, and you literally do an inventory
of just the time that you spend, or
No.
Oh, okay,
the stuff that's just required of you.
Oh.
Then you go back through it. Are all these things actually required, or are you just saying yes to them?
Which ones are extras?
Which is why I say kind of have your job description, right, in your calendar.
I mean, that's a good exercise to be this is extra stuff I'm doing. I need a raise, or I need a bump in my.
Yes. So it's a practical exercise for those folks who maybe are not at the place, or it doesn't make sense to just up and quit, or you're not at, fever level on the thermometer, right?
If you're on the thermometer, you're going to get there. Though.
Yeah, you will. Don't, unless you do something, you will get there. There's no secret window or secret door to escape it other than changing the situation. And so one practical way is doing this role inventory. And then you have information for yourself. It might be a change in behavior. Like, I'm actually not going to take on additional projects. It might be going to your supervisor and saying, okay, like I think I'm doing 2 jobs, or I'm doing all of these things that aren't in my job description. And I feel like I've proven that I am a, flexible, hardworking team member, and this isn't sustainable. It's not. And you make the business case. Yeah. This isn't sustainable for me. It's not sustainable for the company. If this is really required, then we need to figure out how to put the resources to actually get this done, or we drop things. So when we did this at the Rape Recovery Center, it was like I was actually finding myself because I worked with so many mission-driven people that I actually had to go in and delete things for people to give them permission. That's not a requirement. That's something you said yes to. Or it was like, we thought this was a requirement, but actually it needs to go. And so, like, a really specific example is in our development. The goal was I think at one point they were sending out newsletters monthly. And we knew pretty quickly that, like, that just wasn't sustainable. And then it was like, well, maybe we do every other month. And it was like, well, no, every month first. Yeah. And then it was like every other month. And then it was like quarterly. And I'm like, how about we just do biannually?
Like, can we just make this once a year?
Yeah. And that really is where I wanted to go. Yeah. It's like, can we do it once a year? And then maybe you can do like an e-blast for like special events or whatever. But like the amount of work and also the amount of quality in the work they would do in those newsletters was like, I understood that we didn't, and I'm also a person, like, let's not do something if we're not going to do it well. Yeah. But then if we don't have the capacity to do it well, maybe we shouldn't be doing it at all.
That's right. Yeah.
And so as a leader, I had the power to do, I had the power and I made the choice to help staff navigate that. If you're in a system, an organization that doesn't think in that way, there are still ways you can do it for yourself.
Yeah, you have to advocate for yourself. And you have to, I love what you said about just you're a big believer in consent and choice and in your work, but in what you believe in, but also just how you navigate yourself. And I think that would probably be the biggest power play that a lot of people have in their back pocket that doesn't need to be a quitting my job or taking a lesser role or starting my own business or whatever it is that creates a lot of anxiety. But I think that values aligned work will then lead you to a more values aligned organization to some extent, right?
It has an ROI.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're more value aligned, whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit, the outcomes are going to be like 10 times more impactful.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You have people that care deeply. Yeah. They're putting their best foot forward. And like everybody's like on the same trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah. I could talk to you for another hour, 2 hours more. And like just, a couple weeks we could talk about. So I really appreciate you and all of the things that you said. I think I talked to, my circle is with a lot of women of color. Some are leaders, some are in corporate organizations. And I just see this common thread. Some are in nonprofits. I see this common thread that it's just a lot of overexerting and overfunctioning. Yeah. And I could see it in their faces. And then there are some that love their job, right? That's very rare that I've seen. And so,
or they start out loving it, and
they start out loving
like the weight of it eventually. Like, it's really sad, right? To love what you do, and then
it wears off.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what you said earlier, that these systems are not built.
We don't need more resilient women of color.
That's right.
We need a world where we're able to thrive without having to fight.
Yeah. Yes.
Ourselves, our workplaces, the people that we love.
Yeah. Yes.
But especially ourselves.
That's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even just that. I mean, everything that you've said, I think will hold so much weight and power for a lot of the women that I know personally, but just across the board, because these are things that if they could just hear it and they know that, yeah, we see that these are the issues, but it's not just you that's creating it. There's several other things that are working against you. And in that you still have choice. That's such a powerful message for, I know I can name them in my head who they are that this is for. So, so I really appreciate you. I am excited for a Rooted Soul. And we're going to have the website link attached to this particular episode.
Okay.
But is there anything that you want to say around your private practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if anybody is interested, I can see folks in Utah. I'm licensed in Utah and are interested in just even doing a consultation. I'm open to that. Even if I'm not the right fit, I have a very large group of women of color practitioners that I'm in community with. We could find somebody, and also not women of color and not necessarily folks of color, but anybody that this message and this conversation resonates with. Also, I do some consultation for organizations. Like if you're an organizational leader and you want to, I gave some examples of some things that we actually did at the organization that I led. I'm happy to do consultation around that. And then I'm also building out some embodiment consultation, which is not therapy. So for folks who maybe aren't ready to dive into therapy, we can do some body-based coaching.
The somatic parts. Okay.
Like body-based coaching, both for anybody really, but I'm really trying to target mission aligned folks in careers where they're in helping, or maybe they're in a care role, or they're in a leadership role. Like how can you step away from the kind of the current Western model and looking at how we can take the wisdom of the body. So I'm also happy to talk to folks about that. So I'm trying to create a practice that if someone is not ready or interested in therapy, there are some other ways that I could help them.
That's beautiful. And just even the quick assessment that you gave, if you feel like you're warm or you're close to a temperature, or if you feel like you are irritable more than you normally are, or if there are just signs where you can feel your body, the weight on your shoulder, the first thing might be a somatic. If you're not ready for talk therapy, if you're not ready for all the different avenues, it could be a somatic where let's just release it off your body and let you feel neutral for a minute.
Yeah.
And then from there, make a decision on where you want to go.
Exactly.
I think that's a very beautiful service. Thank you.
Thank
Sonya.
you. I'm so happy to have this conversation.
I am too. I appreciate you so much. And we're going to get coffee and we're going to have our 5-hour session soon.
We will. Thank you.